Hey, everybody, welcome back to another show of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. I can't believe we're already here in spring. I'm joined today by my co-host, Shawn Ennis. And Shawn had mentioned something in our previous show with regards to something special that he was going to kind of talk to us about and introduce us to. So, Shawn, let us get the big reveal and kind of tell us what you've got going on here with Rapax and all of this wonderful stuff that you're going to tell us about today.
Thanks, David. So I have, at the end of last year, kind of knew that it was time to start doing more. And that's when I ran into a group of people who have built something from my past, something that I thought was really intriguing. They watched some of our podcasts and heard some of the things that we were doing. And about February, I was reached out and offered to help come on board, lead their team to go to market with this new product called Rapax. So as you know, David, in March, I left my previous gig to start this gig, and was really interested in some of the use cases that they're seeing. I spent a lot of time with their customers, with their partners, to understand and really grasp what the market is, what the opportunity is. And I'm really happy today to kind of come out of stealth and talk about what I've been doing, what they've been doing. And the area I want to talk about first is a problem that I have known for a very long point in my career. In telco, the technology is such where there's so many generational technologies. There's so many things going on. What happens with the knowledge management problem in telco? And that's what this podcast is all about. I call it The Last Engineer Who Knew. And that network firefighting has been a perpetual problem in the telco industry. And I really want to talk about the problem and what I think is the solution, and Rapax is providing that. So just to jump in real quick, in the past, I grew up on telco. I started my career when fiber optics was a big thing and Sonnet was a big thing. And I remember how expensive a roll of fiber cost. Now you can go to Best Buy and pick one up. And I make that point to educate people and remind people that networks built decades ago, they're still there. They're still running. And this technology is 40 years old. It is 30 years old. And there's older technology in there. There's copper in networks still. So what the problem with these telcos are is that they're built on what are called HETnets, or heterogeneous networks. There's multiple generations. There's multiple types of technology. And it's causing a real problem because the talent drain that's happening, right? So we're at a point where a lot of boomers are retiring. And the amount of knowledge that those people had and have going away, there's 10,000 workers retiring daily. And you remove that through retirement, that's a big issue. The second is, and we're hearing this all the time because of AI, is after 5G, that pressure of that spending, that investment that is causing heartburn because of all the inflation, is pushing telcos to downsize and remove resources. And then lastly, telco is no longer the magnet it once was. there's a lot of people who would rather invest their career into different verticals, whether it be finance, the crypto movement, tech has always been popular. Right now, there's a huge magnet of stability in the healthcare. So we're having this issue where all three of these type pressures are impacting telcos and driving people out of the market. Those resources are needed for the complexity of the networks that have been built. Complexities that may start with Sonnet and moving into MPLS networks and 4G and 5G. There's hundreds of vendors and generational combinations. And these technologies are completely different, and it creates a huge skill requirements. I remember seeing a post just the other day where people listed out on job requirements, skill sets, and they're like, this is a whole department in IT. This isn't just one person. So the needs have never been greater of diverse talent in this while everything's going away. So this is a huge problem of talent that telcos are trying to navigate through right here. Does that make sense, David?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense and scary. And for me, it's a little scary too, because this is one of my areas of weakness. I know about MPLS because I have a strong network background in 30 years ago, but I haven't used the PON or anything above that other than maybe some site-to-site wireless technologies. But yeah, I can sit here in hindsight thinking back to, what I used to do and thinking about the modern day technology. What are these telcos going to do with this hole?
Yeah, absolutely. So this problem is creating a new one, right? The Uptime Institute said 66 to 80% of all downtime involves human error. So you can just imagine if you're having more people have less skill and you're losing your highest skill laborers, that there's a talent drain in the industry, and that 85% of outages are caused by procedural failure, meaning that either the runbook wasn't around, the wrong runbook was used, or the user couldn't find the runbook, right? What they indicated in this report for Uptime was that it's not careless procedures. It's just the procedures don't exist. You can't find them when you need them, or they're just outdated. The technology is too diverse. The amount of effort it would take to constantly update documentation is prohibitive to many business being profitable. So, you're on one side, either you have really detailed procedures and that you spend all your time making sure documentation exists and is quality and is tested, or on the flip side is you hire incredibly high quality staff. Both of these just seem unattainable for most telcos today. So, they get stuck in this firefighting trap where they're losing $300,000 an hour of downtime, where you have fewer people for whatever reason, and that they spend more of their time going through and learning by error, trial and error, reactively troubleshooting because they just don't have the necessary context. And because so much time is spent in firefighting, you're not modernizing. You're spending all your time fighting fires, and the cost of this means that you're not ready for the next generation, right? 5G, 6G is going to happen at some point. Technology is going to innovate. So you have that new generation coming in of new technology, which compounds things. It increases how many faults you have, the diversity of faults, because technology of networks are layer cakes on top of each other, right? So they all depend upon each other. So one has a problem, it cascades all over the place, which then creates more burnout. And people are like, hey, I don't want to spend my days firefighting. I don't want my career to be something where I'm either one, staring at a screen all day, waiting for something to break, or B, trying to figure out something that my grandfather learned on, right? And then this causes even more of a drain as people flight telco. And this just compounds. And this is what the future of telco looks like right now. And people are like, hey, Shawn, we've known about this. We're doing things, right? We bought knowledge-based tools. Well, they're not helping. 30% of a workday is spent just searching for information, and 50% of those searches end up failure. So, 3 a.m. when there's an outage that someone's been called on, having somebody hunt to find information, they just end up improvising or escalating, or even worse, they're guessing. And these technologies like SharePoint are great, but they're just a graveyard of information that has no context, that has no clarity, that has gaps that cannot be filled. And so what ends up is that there's more frustration, and engineers spend time not using them. Does that make sense?
Yep, it's the classic unstructured data where, we're not just talking about telcos. Now we're talking about every industry, every vertical. This is just a global problem that we've run into every day for the last N number of years, right?
And so, David, you can see where my trigger gets flipped, right? Right. And I'm like, aha, I know this one, right? I suddenly feel like I'm Columbo. I can talk about this. And that's where this comes into play. And so what Rapax has is an AI native solution. So it's built from the ground up. Instead of having to restructure data, it's built to restructure data automatically with an AI lean. So what's the big problem with AI? Well, quality of data. If you don't have the data, you don't have it contextualized, if it has gaps or conflicting information, it's just not going to work. And so that's really where Rapax comes into play. It's a data organizer for telcos. And this allows you to flip from being a keyword dependent search into an intent-based search, which this is the absolute core of this. It's a bit technical for some of my telco friends out there, but it used to be you could just go into a search bar in Google and ask a question. And if you get an answer to that question, it's going to lead you down and you're going to have to research, and 90% of it's not going to apply. But if you provide an intent-based with context that Rapax provides, suddenly you get much more accurate, applicable, and demonstratably useful information with less effort. And this is the important, that context is so important. And that what Rapax does is it builds the input for you so that you don't have to be a prompt wizard. It takes all the contextual information that it knows, passes it to the large language model, and provides it for the user without any AI knowledge required. So this is just like what you were talking about last time, where we said, hey, we need productivity as the service, not AI as the service.
Yep.
And so it will identify gaps. So if you do have runbook gap information, you can capture that and escalate so that you can fill your gaps. The large language model will do the heavy lifting for you. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of need for this for real. Like I said, we've run into this every day for n number of days, and there's no shortage of pain.
So let's do a quick Christmas Carol type situation when it comes down to what does this mean for the people trying to fix things. 3 a.m, you're bleary-eyed. You say, hey, this site is down. The old way is, you need to go through and search through your knowledge base. Okay, I know it's this type of device. I know that it's this type of alarm. What does that mean? And then it says, hey, I don't know. I don't have anything. Or, even if it does, it doesn't understand contextually what traffic is running on that site, who's responsible for that site to call out. So you kind of have to start either with tribal knowledge, which means you have to escalate to somebody who may know, like, hey, let's wake the site guy up. And you call up the site guy, and what does he say? Hey, that's not my problem. You woke me up for nothing, right? That's a 4-hour call out. I'm charging your company 4 hours for that call out. Versus the opposite side, which is when the problem happens, AI automatically says, hey, let me convert that telco ease, saying, hey, it's the the ONT on Elm Street keeps dropping out. That's the problem. Okay, so, hey, based upon this happening, hey, this has happened 15 times before, and this is the last 10 times, this is what did to fix it. You could do that right now. Do you want me to do it right now? Right? So that human level intelligence that can be added to this situation to simplify the problem so that operations could fix the problem much easier, to the point where Rapax is talking about doing this in a much more automated way to help lights out knock situations. So this is kind of what the outcome is with a Rapax deployed solution, being able to really change the game on the level of hefty requirements you have for your people to fix problems.
And for those listening, how customizable can you get down, into the nth degree? Obviously, all these systems are really great, but as I understood from us talking earlier, that this is highly customizable. So irregardless of where a client may be or a potential client may be that's feeling this, it seems that you have a configuration that will fit that particular need at any time that they have it.
Yeah, everything is AI native, but it's also cloud native. It's built on standards. It's built on standard libraries that you could go into an AWS and deploy the majority of the infrastructure. And that any of this infrastructure, if you needed help managing it, it's all standards based. So there's nothing really too complex about this technology. It's just really easy to deploy. So that's really what I want to talk about next. And you're great straight man, David, which is, okay, how do I actually absorb this operationally? Like, okay, Shawn, great idea, but how do I do it? How do I accomplish it? Which, you start with capturing what exists today. You take the unstructured data, you export it, and you import it into Rapax, right? Your vendor manuals, your tribal documents, your ticket history, right? This is not 9 months of data, 6 months of migration. You should be able to take all of your data, export it out, and import it in a single day. Weeks is what I try to tell people to expect on this phase. Then when you have that, you can then start asking questions in the knowledge base about what's missing, right? You could do discoveries of your network with Rapax to be able to add that to it so that you understand what the device does, you understand the technology the device is doing, you understand how it's been deployed in the network, You understand what customers and what services are running on the network. Obviously, when you start adding this layer cake into your knowledge, you get a much more in-depth understanding of what's going on, so that when you have a fault, when you have a performance issue, contextually, you understand what the problem is much more. And it leads to fewer mistakes. It leads to higher level automation. But more importantly, once you get up and going and you identify, hey, we need to pull this data in, we're missing that data, and you could set up projects to strategically add more data to your knowledge base, you go to the last phase, which is, okay, as you're fixing problems, you want to capture that information and roll it back into the knowledge base. So it is a crawl, walk, run strategy to implementing something like this. Hopefully that explains how it works.
Pretty straightforward. One of the things that that comes to mind is the opportunity for integration with existing standard operating procedures that folks have. Can you talk a little bit about, not only can it assimilate the knowledge into the knowledge base for AI, and I'm assuming it could make a decision as to whether or not something is a hardware issue or if it's a configuration issue. If it's a configuration issue, and of course there's a lot of ifs here, if that is known within the knowledge base, but it's buried, right? You know, because this is the problem with unstructured data, is that AI in certain use cases, depending on what it might be, and it's up to the company to determine the risk, to have AI go ahead and just automatically try to resolve that for them. Or if it's per your example where the aunt on, I forget the street name, but X Street is blinking out every so often, and there's a kind of an analytical trend going on, that there's all kinds of opportunity here for scheduled maintenance, looking at the maintenance logs, getting all of that organized, getting dispatch around all of this too as well. So not only is it reactive to help probably solve a lot of these issues that come up, but I can envision that there's a lot of opportunity for integration into other areas of the business that they're already doing. So their exponential return on investment from implementing something like this, I would assume, would definitely be exponentially positive.
Right. And again, what most customers of Rapax are telling me, that they want Rapax to be part of the layer cake, not the whole cake, even though it can. So, you know, your point is perfect. So what this knowledge engine that Rapax have, it's just one of many that Rapax offers out of the box. I like talking about it more because it makes more sense to me. But it's called Wade. And Wade is that AI agent that is doing all this. Now, it works with many other agents to do automated tasks. David, right to your point, it is a multi-agent solution, Rapax. So Oscar has more of the reporting, breakfast reports and forensics. So when the executives ask, hey, give me a post-mortem on this problem, they can reach out and talk to Oscar. Bruce is another great one that basically this is how everything's integrated. How are we getting all this data together? So that is a patented approach to doing OSS, BSS integrations we could talk about in the future. And then Nora is more of understanding the device cycle, the service management side of things, understanding here's the customer, here's the service that they're paying for. That service is rolled out on these devices within the network. And then there is a notification engine. And so right to your point is automation. That's really the next thing that Rapax is working on right now. Their next release is going to have another agent called Victor. And Victor does the triage. And so the goal of Victor is to accomplish that dark knock, that automation, so that, right to your point, I want to triage what's going on, and I want to bring a human in when I understand what the problem is and what needs to be done to do it. One, because humans are going to be needed to fix the network a lot of times. Number two, anything that AI does, I want to loop through a human to make sure that somebody signs off on what the AI is doing, and that somebody, a human being with a heartbeat, is saying, that's a good idea, go do it for me, and afterwards tell me what you did and if it worked. And I want to go through and double check. I want to put a human in the loop in any kind of fixing situation. But I do want to get humans out of the loop when it comes down to searching for documentation, trying to figure out contextually what's going on, and doing postmortems. Because those three activities are the ones that I hear engineers hate the most. And when I hear a role hate something, I'm like, that's a great opportunity for AI.
I think Wade's last name is Through.
So, as I said, this is, weeks. You're talking about within 3 months, you should be able to get out from underneath this problem. You do have a wide variety of data that can be consumed. You can consume that really quickly and get going to get a lot of value within the first month or two. And then getting your processes in place so that when your smart engineers are adding data, that you become independent from the tribal knowledge. You're separating the company from the tribal knowledge that is used to maintain it. And this is extremely valuable for companies who are going under these problems. So, the architectural shift to agentic AI is something everybody knows they need to do. 70% of enterprises are going to be deploying agentic AI. 80% of operations said their last outage was preventable with better processes. What Wade and Rapax is doing is trying to address two problems at once. We know you need agentic AI. We know you can have better knowledge management. So being able to come into you and solve that one problem for your operations in a very short period of time and detach your operations from the requirements of generational knowledge, of tribal knowledge, is something that is an achievable outcome today. So want to finish up by opening the door. This is mycal.com. Feel free to reach out and set up a meeting. If you want to understand the details here, I know I kept it kind of high level, but we have a white paper, which is that URL up in the top, should work. And that URL, oh, here we go. This one right here. If you go to this QR code, you should be able to go in after you put your information in, and you should be able to download. It's about a 10, 11 page white paper that explains this in a lot more detail. And I invite everybody to go take a look at that white paper and see if this is something your organization could definitely profit off of. So, David, any questions?
No, other than just my brain spinning here, and I'm just seeing, not only the actual problem here that you described, but thinking about all of the parallel seeds across multiple verticals. And I'm looking over my history and my experience and thinking, where could I have plugged this in the past? And so I see lots of areas, even outside of telecom itself. But yeah, for the telecom industry specifically, you and I have both in our past lives worked together in a company that had several telecoms that we worked with and through. And so I can definitely tell you that these folks could definitely use something like this for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Where do you?
Rapax is really focusing on the telco market, but that doesn't mean that large IT organizations can't use this technology to monitor thousands of devices of infrastructure. That's what it's designed for, thousands of devices of infrastructure. And to use the old Texan comment, it takes all the snakes and lays them out straight, right? That's its job.
Well, I think everybody needs a snake straightener, right? So I know I use one, call it a cane, to use a biblical reference, straighten it out there. So normally we would instruct people to, if they have any questions for you or for me, but I just want to call out very clearly with the information that's on the screen, if you have specific questions to this particular product or anything that Shawn talked about today, please go ahead and use the QR code, which is a smaller version of that larger one that we showed you. It's up there at the right corner. I'll put this back up on screen for everybody to quickly go ahead and scan. If you hadn't already scanned it, go ahead and scan it now. Otherwise, you should be able to scan in the upper left-hand corner above Shawn's head, the QR code that's there, and you can reach out to Shawn, ask any particular questions you want. If you so happen to have any questions and you send it out to our Transformation Leaders podcast, which, by the way, we're here every single Wednesday. And you'll also see the Transformation Leaders podcast website down there, the link down there below. But we are here every single Wednesday having and talking about a new conversation. Matter of fact, we're having a conversation with some other folks about joining us here on the podcast. So this, as Shawn had mentioned, was a culmination in the works, with Shawn and I doing this for, I think, almost 2 years now, a year and a half, something like that. Feels like eternity. But in any event, these types of conversations spark organic growth and other conversations inside of it. And so Shawn and I have spoken to a lot of you guys about a lot of things and questions that you guys have. So keep those questions coming in. Keep the conversation going. Join us on LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn. Shawn and I both post regularly. And if you go to the Transformation Leaders podcast, there's a form that's at the bottom. You can also catch any of our past episodes there. Leave comments on YouTube or any number of places that we post this show too. But unless you have anything else in closing, I'll leave it there, and we'll see everybody next Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.